let's say hello to the National Museum of the Royal Navy. And I'm going to hand over the mic to Taki. Hello.
Hello.
Hi there. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you loud and clear.
Hello, hi, I'm Nick Hewitt. I'm from the National Museum of the Royal Navy. I am the head of collections and research. So I'm a 20th century naval historian by background. I started out studying in London, and then I started my career at the Imperial War Museum. Actually worked aboard HMS Belfast for 6 years as their resident historian. But then in 2010, I came down here and I joined the National Museum of the Royal Navy, which is obviously the spiritual home of all 20th century naval historians. So who are we? We are the collective memory of the Royal Navy, basically. 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, the Navy decided they wanted to work with a single national museum. So we started out as what had been all the individual service museums, the old Royal Naval Museum, the Royal Marines Museum, the Fleet Air Arm Museum, and the Royal Naval Submarine Museum. And we've grown and grown since then. So we've now got Explosion Museum of Naval Firepower, which is a huge collection of 20th century weaponry. We've got NMRN Hartlepool with the sailing frigate HMS Trincomalee. We run HMS Caroline in Belfast, Northern Ireland, the last surviving ship from the Battle of Jutland. We've got HMS Victory, Nelson's famous flagship, here in Portsmouth. And we've got this wonderful ship. This is HMS M33. She is our First World War shallow water bombardment monitor. So a bit more about her later on, I think. So we have an ever-growing empire. We're still acquiring material. It's a really exciting time, and even more exciting now because we've been closed due to COVID. We've obviously been the same as everyone else. We've had to keep our heads down, and now we're slowly, like a butterfly coming out. We're reopening and letting the public in, and it's really exciting to have people in our museums and on our ships again. Just a really, really exciting time to be here.
That's great. It also seems that the weather is with us, and it's really favorable to the outdoor exhibition.
It is. It's absolutely beautiful today. The first lovely day of the spring, really. I came dressed for winter, and look at it.
Yeah. We have a video from the Portsmouth that we will show. That's how long is it?
I think it's about 15 minutes. You guys sent us like a fantastic video, I think, showing off some of your locations. And should we just play that so that we have a little bit of information to go on for the Q&A, and then we have something to talk about, yeah?
Sounds great.
I think that's the plan.
Okay, cool. When we will join you back in just a few minutes. Enjoy.
This was a sad sight. Landing craft tank LCT 7074 when she arrived at HM Naval Base Portsmouth for restoration by the National Museum of the Royal Navy. An orphan of the ocean, a naval warrior cast aside by the world she'd fought to rescue from tyranny. On the beach, full of rust and rot, filthy and forgotten. Not anymore. Not now the National Museum's engineering team have her in hand.
Externally, she's going to look like she did in 1944.
It's an incredible challenge, but it's just so exciting to see us motoring along and actually moving.
So you spray and grind, you scrape and chamfer, you cut and repair, and slowly the truth of your ship, the last of 800 D-Day tank landing craft, comes into the light once more. All this work is for a clear purpose: to support the National Museum of the Royal Navy's commitment to have us all engage with the story of Britain's Navy, and to provide a stunning new asset for Southsea's D-Day Story Museum, and to honour those who landed in Normandy on the 6th of June 1944 to free Europe from Nazism. Some of those veterans are here today, along with volunteers from D-Day Story. For them all, the work of LCTs like 7074 must be remembered and honoured.
They were the bully boys that went in early to create the landing space, and it was the little boys in the landing craft who set about getting on shore and creating a bridgehead.
It's an extra exhibit which will be external to the displays we have already. So to have an outdoor viewing of something relevant, I think is really special.
To put it into perspective, I often think about my own son who's 18 and how he would have faced that, and I just cannot imagine it. I really can't imagine it. But there were somebody's sons, somebody's brothers, somebody's husbands, and they didn't know if they were going to return or not.
This will be LCT 7074's new home, where D-Day Story volunteers will welcome visitors on board. A giant structure of steel and weatherproof fabric, hard by the waters of the Solent in Southsea, where so many D-Day vessels assembled before the invasion. With the restoration of LCT 7074 gathering pace, another major step forward, a new bow door, just like the forward ramp that slammed down on the Normandy beaches and sent her cargo of Allied tanks rumbling ashore.
What we've replicated here is from the original drawings, and we've recreated the actual size and dimensions of the door of the original feature. Although she's a lot lighter, she's only actually going to take people, and she won't be taking a tank anymore.
There's a classic Royal Navy quip, familiar to every sailor: if it moves, salute it; if it doesn't, paint it. The ML UK team took that to heart, covering every inch of the 59-metre ship by hand. Then came her name, the soul of the LCT.
There is an ever so faint outline of where they were originally, but obviously where it's had repairs and things done to it, it's there's not much of it left. So we're just going on what's there and trying to fill in the gaps.
14 months and nearly 900 litres of paint later, the giant marquee that's protected LCT 7074 during her restoration is removed. Curtain up. All that 7074 awaits now is her funnel, her armament, and other key equipment. Everything visitors to D-Day story will see, including 2 embarked tanks, is backed by detailed research into the LCT and her role at Normandy in 1944. With hundreds of assault ships engaged, the landings were a numbers game throughout, and the numbers had to be right. 7074's 3517.
In order to make sure that the invasion was successful and all of the troops landed in the right place at the right time, it was crucial that all of them were allocated to a very complicated timetable, and this number relates to LCT 7074's role.
We've recorded every inch and every minute of what we've done, and then those paint layers, that primer, and then finally what was always going to be the most exciting bit was the camouflage finish and the numbers, and then later on we've got her funnel going back on and all that kind of stuff. So this is the really lovely, rewarding bit that just makes you feel really emotional, actually.
Are you tempted to take a paintbrush and pop up and do a bit of work with Darren and the lads?
I would be very tempted, but I'm nowhere near as good as they are, so no chance whatsoever. They shouldn't let me anywhere near her.
So here she is, LCT 7074, ready to deploy into her new role, to stand for her sister ships and their crews as a reminder of the greatest invasion in history. It's taken 6 years to get here, as long as the Second World War itself, to mark anew the courage and sacrifice of D-Day, the beginning of the end of the agony of Europe.
And we're back.
Hello.
So it seems that we have moved somewhere after
We have
the
indeed.
video. Yes, where are we now?
So this is up on the upper deck of HMS M33. Welcome aboard. So M33 is a really unusual ship, actually. She is our shallow water bombardment monitor from the First World War. She's actually one of only 3 ships left from the First World War in the Royal Navy that still survive. And we're lucky enough to look after 2 of them. We've got this one and HMS Caroline, our light cruiser over in Belfast. M33 was designed and built incredibly quickly during the First World War for a very specific purpose. Her job is to get in close inshore and deploy very big guns for a small ship of this size to provide support to the army on land. So she's not built to fight other warships. And actually, if she went up against another warship, she'd be in real trouble. She's very small. She is underpowered, so she's quite slow. She's shallow draft and flat bottomed, and that allows her to come very, very close inshore. She's probably about the size of a First World War destroyer, similar number of men to crew her, but wider and shallow draft so she can creep in. And then she's operated from this very, very simple bridge. The entire ship's company live in a mess deck just below where we're standing. If you peer inside, and let's just see if we can get, you can see that the wheel is very peculiar. It's on this elevated platform. And that's because when they were building these ships, they realized that they'd created a problem, because if we go down this way, what they're all about are these very, very big guns. These are 6-inch guns. Now, if you imagine that a destroyer of the time about this size ship would have 3-inch or 4-inch guns. So these are massive guns for a small ship. And what they found was that the helmsman couldn't see over the gun mount or the smoke that the gun generated. So they elevated him. And if we just point the camera back, you can just see they built an extension on the bridge so that the helmsman could see over the guns. So she carries 2 of these monster 6-inch guns. And the idea is, as I say, to get in close inshore and then fire as far inland as you possibly can. Our guns were added later. The original guns to the ship were lost, and then new guns were acquired. They're both historic weapons. And actually the aftergun, we now know, came from HMS Canada, which was a battleship at the Battle of Jutland. So the smaller gun aft was one of the guns that fought at Jutland. Now, I know there's a subject that's very close to all your hearts.
Yes.
And that is the subject
we are
of
moving
food.
somewhere.
So everything on this ship is incredibly basic. So if we just turn around, this door here, that's one of the doors into the mess deck. So all the guys lived in that space where the deck elevates in the forecastle there. That's where they lived. Where did they get their food, and where did they go to the toilet? The 2 most common questions asked. Well, they went to the toilet in here. So there's 2 heads for the entire ship's company of about 70 guys, and there's 2 wash basins. And then the officers had another head and another wash basin aft, and that's it for everybody. So it's not much more complex than our landing craft, which you saw in the video earlier. And then they get their food here. So this is the little tiny galley where the cooks worked, basically a coal burning stove, all very basic, all very small. I can't offer you a toaster, I'm afraid, because toasters hadn't been invented at this point. So if they had toast, they had it over an open grill. But you can see some rather lovely bacon that we have cooking up there on the stove. So this is, again, all the cooking for the entire ship. And then if we go down a little bit further aft, we've got a few more bits we can show you. Down here is, these were two cabins for 2 of the officers. And actually, if we walk through, we can end up on the other side where we want to do the Q&A. So this is a reasonable look at what a reasonably officer's cabin would be. This was the ship's gunner. So he was a commissioned warrant officer. So he's separated slightly from the other officers, but he gets the same space and facilities. Obviously, this is the Second World War. So the ship's company are in hammocks. This isn't where one would have slung, but nevertheless, that's what they're sleeping in. And then down aft, you've got the officers' accommodation and a little tiny wardroom on the upper deck aft And then the rest of her is all engines and boilers, actually. So down below, there's the magazines for the explosives for the guns, the small mess deck, and a very big engine move space. We have no engine moves in this ship anymore, so we use that for like an audio-visual presentation and an exhibition space. So she's very tiny, very basic. She came into service for the Gallipoli landings in 1915. So that was her first operational use, was providing fire support for the army in Gallipoli. After that, she spent the rest of the First World War in the Mediterranean. And then actually, bizarrely, she at the end of the war, she was deployed on the Dvina River in support of Churchill's slightly bizarre expedition to overturn the revolution. So she was part of the North Russian intervention force on the Dvina River. And actually, that's where she got this dazzle paint scheme from her time in North Russia. So it's a very, very quick tour of M33 for you.
Right, thank you for the tour. The chat is very pleased with the exhibition with the excursion to the galley and to the heads, because that seems to be the topic of today's stream. I mean, yes, sometimes it's the hive mind is amazing. But we had already one question that was related to the forecastle hatch.
Yeah.
Why are there 5 door handles on the hatch?
It's just a watertight door, so there's 5 clips to seal it shut. It's obviously on the upper deck, and these ships were very low in the water, so you get in a heavy sea, they're quite vulnerable. So you really want to make sure that door is sealed and shut properly. There's no on an older ship like this, there is no through passageway that would run the length of the ship, like in a modern warship. There is one now because of holes that have been cut in her since she became a museum. But historically, to get from one bit of the ship to the other, they would have had to go up on the upper deck and along the upper deck and then down again. So people would have been coming and going quite a lot. So you want to make sure you secure that hatch properly.
Cool. Thanks for the explanation. Then there is a question from Zodiac RAN. Where did they store the shells? Where were the magazines on the monitor?
So there's two magazines and shell rooms immediately below, basically below where the gun is. So there's one kind of where that ladder is, and the other one aft. I'd love to take you down there, but we'll lose all our signal immediately. This ship has no armor. So it's really important to bear in mind. So they're incredibly vulnerable, even around the magazines there's no armor. There's just quite thin steel plate. And also the Royal Navy ships of this period had 2-piece ammunition. So you've got the shell, the explosive shell, and then you've got the cordite bag of propellant, and they are stored in separate places. We all know the story of the Battle of Jutland and cordite explosions. So they do what they can around safety, but fundamentally she's pretty vulnerable. If she took a hit in the magazine, she'd go up pretty quickly.
Okay, yeah, we have. The questions are coming now. So from Fix the Noob, what kind of engine does she have? Well, rather, did she have steam or diesel or what?
So she is a reciprocating steam engine, so quite a basic engine, but she is oil powered. She represents that period of time actually when the Royal Navy is transitioning from coal to oil. So she is an oil fired ship. But still a very basic engine.
Yeah, cool. The Clef Ender is commenting, so no armor, bad speed. Was she just designed to be cannon fodder? I think rather like a cannon carrier, right?
Well, actually both. And to be fair, none of us want to say it, but actually that's precisely what she was. One of the reasons for designing these ships was because they were more expendable than the larger bombarding ships. And if you think back to your history of Gallipoli, these ships are designed, what they've experienced in Gallipoli is sending the older battleships, the pre-dreadnought battleships, close inshore to support the troops. And they started to lose them. They lost 3 and another French one in the Narrows in the Dardanelles. So they worked out that even the older battleships, although the battleship was expendable, the crew weren't. And they were terribly worried of the enormous loss of life you'd get if a pre-dreadnought battleship rolled over and sank. Something like this can provide that firepower, but she is expendable. If she's destroyed, she's fairly cheap, fairly basic, and easy to replace. So yeah, in a sense, she is cannon fodder, yeah.
Yeah, and this leads us to another question from Captain Minia. It was said this ship was very quickly designed and built, but how quickly was it actually done from paper to finished?
She was less than 6 months. I think 4 months from being almost literally the back of an envelope. I've seen a drawing where they sketched it out to actually laying down and building. So the concept is sometime around the end of when does she come in? She's beginning of 1915. And by the summer of 1915, she doesn't make the Dardanelles landings, but she does get out to Gallipoli for the secondary landings at Suvla Bay. So very, very quickly indeed, it's 6 months from back of an envelope to operational.
Okay, that's impressive. That seems to be also very surprising for the guys in the chat. And there was a question from Bihus. What's her draft? You mentioned that it's a shallow draft ship to get close to shore. So how close?
Yeah, I was laughing with colleagues earlier. I'm one of those people who doesn't keep numbers in his head, I'm afraid. So we can check that, but I don't have the number in my head. I'm really sorry.
Yeah. Right. It's presumably very close, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We can check it later.
Yeah. And roughly how many people serviced this little beast?
So the ship's company was about 60 to 70, depending on whether they had any extras on board. So she didn't start the war, for example, with a surgeon, but then she got a surgeon. So yeah, very, very small ship's company, and all with very specific jobs. Most of them are around the guns and the engines. And then the sort of basic seaman roles. And she's got, I think, 6 officers, including the gunner, who is a sort of commissioned warrant officer, basically. So very, very small ship's company.
Okay. Yeah, that's... I mean, you couldn't really fit more people in this in this footprint.
No, that's
anyway.
right. And nearly all of them are living in that space. So it's pretty packed.
I would now switch the topic probably a bit, because I saw earlier when you were walking around, I saw the HMS Victory up front. So
indeed, should we go and have a look? We'll move and bring her into shot. Hang on.
That would be awesome. Yes.
There we go.
Now, apologies to the chat. We will have a bit of wind, but I think the sight is well worth it, because where can you see this? A ship of the line in the dockyard.
Well, what you're looking at here is, so you've got centuries of naval history here, because you've got in the background there, the big black building, that's our colleagues in the Mary Rose. So you've got the 16th century Navy there. Then you've got the 18th and early 19th century golden age of sail, HMS Victory, Nelson's flagship, now the nation's flagship, really. And then we're standing on the 20th century with HMS M33. And usually, sadly, normally you have one of our magnificent aircraft carriers in port for the 21st century, but both of them are at sea at the moment. So there's just a gaping expanse where normally we have a Queen Elizabeth class aircraft carrier, but there's nowhere else really where you can see such a huge span of naval history. We're ever so proud to be able to do that.
Yeah, we have here a comment from Lemon Curd on Toast. That yeah, some nicknames are really amazing, but he actually pointed out something that I didn't notice before, but now that we saw Victory again, I noticed it, that the middle mast is missing for maintenance, I presume. How often do you do this?
So we don't do it very often. Victory is in the middle of an overhaul that will last, in total, it will be 20 years. Although it started quite some time ago. I think we've got about 12 years to go. Because basically the ship, in the 1920s, they put the ship on dock blocks in that dry dock. And in the 1920s, nobody really understood how you had to go about looking after a ship when it wasn't in the water. So what they did was they put her on the same support system that they did when they were dry docking a ship. And that's fine, but it's not designed to last 100 years. So we found that after a lot of work surveying the hull was kind of collapsing. So the whole, what they had to do initially was replace the system that she sits on. Then we've got to do a lot of work replacing and strengthening the timbers. And only when that's done can the masts go back. So if you look at the ship, actually, if we turn around, your contributor rightly spotted that the center mast, the main mast has come out. That only came out this week. And if you go over here, there it is. So we're going to be doing some conservation on that mast. But then the other two masts, they're all missing what are called the top masts. So the mast should be twice as high again. And they had to be taken off because until we support the hull really won't take the weight. So there's a very careful plan. It's a huge project. Mercifully, I don't have to do it. At the end of which the ship will be stable and strong enough to support those masts and everything will go back on. But it's probably 10 to 12 years away before you'll see all the masts completely back on the ship and everything finished.
That's a lot of work. I've also seen that from time to time HMS Victory actually gets to fire her guns.
Yeah, so HMS Victory is still a commissioned ship of the Royal Navy, which is why she's allowed to fly the white ensign, as you can see there. So she is the first Sea Lord's official flagship, and she's used for all sorts of ceremonial functions. We're very privileged to look after her for the Navy. But there are serving sailors who work on board. They have functions on board. They fire guns for royal birthdays and all sorts of things. So yes, she is an active ship and is used a lot.
There is a question from Albin322. Why not keep Victory in a building like the Vasa in Stockholm? Would that not save the ship for future generations?
It probably would, but I think if you imagine the situation here, the building would be vast. So there's the building, to do any good, any building would also have to be climate controlled. So actually just putting her in a building isn't enough. You have to control the environment in there. So unless you've got it absolutely perfect, and the Vasa building is very good, but I think they do have some challenges with their building, which is quite old. So the expense would be absolutely vast. And actually, if it's preserved in the right way, timber is actually better than steel for leaving outdoors. So, who knows what they will decide in 50 years' time. Maybe they will decide to put her in a building. But right now, we're very confident that we've got a really good solution that actually means you can still see the ship in her natural environment.
Cool. And a related question was whether the reinforcing and reconstruction of the Victory is done by the historical methods, like the traditional shipbuilding methods, or whether there is some new technology used.
So the support system, so the new props, that's all very new technology, and it would be lovely to take you over there and show you it. One of the exciting things that you can do now if you come to the dockyard as a visitor is you can walk underneath Victory and see the underneath of the hull and that propping system. But anything we do on the ship always has to be ideally using the methods and the technology of the time. So we have traditional shipwrights who work for the National Museum who look after Victory and HMS Warrior down the other end of the dockyard. And we have riggers who look after the rigging. So very much those traditional wooden ship skills. Clearly they will use modern tools, modern safety equipment, but the methodology that we use to look after the ship is very traditional.
Mm-hmm. And one more question for the HMS Victory. Apparently, Atpre is commenting that she got damaged by bombing in World War II. How severe was the damage?
She did, and it was pretty serious, actually. And when you do that tour underneath the hull, you can see where the bomb struck the dock on the side, and you can see some of the damage to the keel of the ship caused by that bombing. And actually, you can also see that here, Stephen, if we wander over. So in the same raid, if you just look at the dock that we're standing in now, so if you just pan this way first, you can see the dressed stone. And as we pan across, you can see a really big, ugly cement slab bang in the middle of the dock there. And that's where another bomb from the same raid fell and took out a bite from the corner of this dock. So yeah, Victory was very much in the front line during the Second World War.
Okay, well, I'm glad she survived.
So are we.
Yeah. There is also the HMS Warrior, right? And a submarine somewhere around
So
on the other side of the bay, right?
That's right. So we've got HMS Warrior 1860. So she is hugely important. She was really that transitional ship that took us from this kind of thing made of wood powered by sails with muzzle loading cannons. Warrior takes you to an iron ship with much bigger, more powerful guns and steam power. So she's a huge step forward. She's at the other end of the dockyard. And then our submarine, HMS Alliance, she's over at the other side of the harbour in the Submarine Museum in Gosport. So she is one of the last of the Second World War submarines. She's built right at the end of World War II. And then she is converted during the Cold War and has a long service life, really as a Cold War submarine. So she gets the Royal Navy's equivalent to the really well-known American Guppy program, where they took all the gun off and streamlined the sail and made her look a little bit like a nuclear submarine in shape. And then she gets a life that takes her all the way through the 50s and 60s. So another really exciting visit on the other side of the harbour there.
Okay. There are questions now in YouTube about what did people miss in the stream in the last 6 hours. So just a quick rundown. There was a Mikasa, there was the Vampire from Australia, there was the HMS Cavalier, there was French submarine Espadon, and many more. So I recommend you watch the stream now, and after the stream, return to the VOD and watch what you missed, because it's definitely well worth watching. Yeah, I have a quick question about the ship that is not with you, because she's in Belfast, but the HMS Caroline. She's open for public already, right? And what is her state like? What state is she in now? Because I know that she was for a long time. She was like a barracks ship or a hulk. So was she already reconstructed?
She's still closed at the moment because obviously everything's reopening gradually, and there's all sorts of difficulties around that. Her condition now is absolutely beautiful. She was a barracks. She was the floating headquarters for the Naval Reserve, right from the 1920s all the way through. So that's the reason why we've still got her. She's an absolutely beautiful ship. She is a light cruiser, so she's a real greyhound. She's designed for reconnaissance, scouting ahead of the fleet, and all that kind of thing. She is probably about half the size of HMS Belfast, if that's the kind of thing that people are familiar with. She's much narrower, slimmer, very much designed for speed. When we stripped away all the kind of decades of Royal Naval Reserve 1970s furniture and all that kind of stuff, we found an incredibly intact and complete ship. And she's been restored to her condition at the Battle of Jutland. She took part in the Battle of Jutland. She saw action during the day phase and also again in the night phase of the battle. So she had a really, really important part of the history of Jutland. And you can get that experience when you visit her. She looks phenomenal. She's a really beautiful ship. We're very, very proud to have her. The really exciting thing about Caroline, unlike this ship, is she actually had her engines. All those years with the Navy, they never took them out. So there's the oldest set of geared turbines, Parsons geared turbines, anywhere in the world you can see still in situ on board HMS Caroline.
Okay, that's impressive. That's just bumping her up on my to-visit list. I wanted to travel more around Europe and to visit even like more museums in the UK, but unfortunately then the COVID happened. So,
of course, yeah, unfortunate for us too.
Yeah, but you are already open, right? Like since yesterday or something?
Yeah, so check our website for details, but the dockyard here is open, and our other sites are following on pretty close behind.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, just quick shout out from the voice from the off. You can also, if you want to get involved, helping to keep British naval history alive. The National Museum of the Royal Navy absolutely gladly accepts donations, and there's a link in chat for you to click.
Very much for that.
Manga Baby, can we go on the dockyard to look the boat? I guess he means the submarine. I guess she's too far away, right?
No. We offer a full ticket. You can get a ticket that takes you onto everything, and we'll get you into the other side of the harbour where we've got the submarine and explosion museum with all the guns, the collection of guns and ordnance. So it's all part of the same ticket. So if you come to the dockyard, you can buy that ticket and you can come back until you've seen everything.
There's a question from YouTube from WS. How many wooden hull ships are still being preserved in your museum?
Well, our museum, the National Museum of the Royal Navy, has we've got HMS Victory, and we've got a beautiful sailing frigate, very master and commander, HMS Trincomalee. And she's up in the National Museum of the Royal Navy in Hartlepool in the northeast of England, so right up at the other side of the country. So you get both kind of extremes of the sailing navy there. There's a sailing frigate called Unicorn in Dundee. She's not part of ours. And I'm not. I think that's it for really kind of big sailing warships. There may be one or two others, but I'm not that familiar with all of them. But we have Trincomalee and Victory.
Cool. And since our time is slowly running out, I guess we have a very nice last question here from Captain Minia. Whether you have a particular favorite ship or exhibition in the museum?
Oh no, I hate that question.
It's like being forced to pick your favorite child.
Yes.
Look, I'm going to have to do this, and it won't surprise any of my colleagues. Right now, you've seen the film of our landing craft, LCT 7074. That's been my project since 2014, when she was just a funnel sticking up out of the water in Birkenhead. So right now, that's my favourite because it's been such a big part of my life for the last 6 years. So I have to say that one.
I have to say that from watching the video of the restoration, you guys made a very, very good job with it, so I can see why.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for the for your presence, for your tour of the M33, and I guess we will now have to prepare to do a transoceanic travel to the East Coast. But yeah, definitely for everyone who is watching, if you ever have a trip to southern England, definitely visit the Royal Navy Museum because it's awesome.
Thank you very much for inviting me to join you. I've had a really good time, and good luck with the Americans across the Atlantic.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you very much.
Big shout out for coming out and doing this with us. And for all of you out there, the National Museum of the Royal Navy is partly open. So if you want to go get your naval history fix, go visit them. Say we sent you, and I'm sure they'll be happy about that. Thank you so much, Nick, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy the beautiful sunny weather. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Bye.